Okay, g'day everyone. We're going to be looking at a video from Kevin Thompson that is about a year old. And he argues that we shouldn't follow any procedure. God is... Anyway, let's listen to him because I can't remember exactly how he says it. He likes to use words and then attach his definitions to those words, and you wonder what he's talking about. He's just as confusing as a Calvinist or an Arminian or a conditionalist or an evolutionist, quite frankly. So let's get into this video. So I agree with some of what he says, including in this video. But then he says stuff that makes sense. Kevin that has a brain.
Hi, welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. In this video, we're gonna show a clip from a video we did back on January 6th. And what I want to point out to you is this: that when the Synod of Dort came out,
Synod.
It is commonly misframed by Calvinists that the Synod of Dort resulted in Calvinism and its opposite.
Is he deliberately mispronouncing things, or he just doesn't care how they're actually pronounced? Synod of Dort. Oh, did someone disconnect my keyboard? Far out.
But really it did not. It actually resulted in two different kinds of Calvinism. Synod of Dort is just a Calvinist squabble, and nothing from there ever left Calvinism. And you wound up with Arminian Calvinism and Bayesian Calvinism. So watch this short clip and make sure you point this out to Calvinists. And the framing is too small, and we need to zoom out the framing. Make sure you point this out to Calvinists. Arminianism is not the opposite of Calvinism. It's a branch of Calvinism, and we need to understand this in order to properly define the problem. This is crucial. Thanks to Evan Johnson via email, who pointed this out to me and suggested that we do this as a separate short clip. So I appreciate that. Without further ado, as James White would say, let's get to the clip.
Does James White actually say without further ado? Is James White trying to be funny when he says that? Without further ado. To do something. Without further ado. Without doing anything else. Let's get on with it. Good gracious.
Clip. Watch. I thought about doing a separate video of this, but what you need to understand about Calvinism, what people don't understand, is the Calvinism that we have today. The tulip comes, the acronym, the tulip, the 5 points of the tulip, the acronym itself, tulip, comes from a book in 1932 by
1932 tulip. The L of tulip didn't exist before 1932. The elements that became tulip existed before 1932, but the acronym tulip, the systematic theology developed by Lorraine Boetner, or however you pronounce his name, I don't know. I haven't found out the definitive. Funny, after I've been talking about pronunciation, but some things you're not sure how they're pronounced, and people do pronounce them different ways. Other things, there is a definitive pronunciation. Without further ado is one of those things. That is the correct pronunciation. Anyway, back to tulip. The L of tulip didn't exist until the Synod of Dort. In fact, no, that's not quite true. It didn't exist before Theodore Beza. And Theodore Beza proposed limited atonement, that Christ only died for some. The gift is only effectually offered to some. Not just only effectual for some, which all biblical Christians agree with, but only effectually offered to some. It's only actually available to some. That was Theodore Beza, second-generation reformer. And so following on from this, you get Calvinism splitting into these two branches. I completely agree with Kevin Thompson on this. I'm about to disagree with something that he says. But we'll get there when we get there.
By Lorraine Bettner, okay?
Once again, Tulip, 1930s. 1900 years after Jesus, Tulip. Oh, but that's just a name for something the church always believed. No, it's not. Limited atonement was not believed by the church before Theodore Beza. There's one guy, Gottschalk or something, before Theodore Beza. He's the only other one. But until Theodore Beza, limited atonement was not believed by the church. And I don't mean the Roman Catholic Church. I mean the church, the biblical church. Nobody besides Gottschalk believed limited atonement before Theodore Beza in the 1500s or whenever he was.
What that means is that before 1932, nobody is using, per se, the TULIP acronym. He kind of coined that 1932 in his book. So you can go look at that when you get a chance. The 5 points into which Calvinism was summarized stemmed from the Synod of Dort
Synod,
which went from 1618 to 1619.
Nobody knows what they're
talking
about.
By that time, Calvin
Synod
and Arminius were both
Synod.
dead. And I have a video called Arminius Was a Calvinist. Before you get all up in arms and start fussing about that, by the way, if you're a non-Calvinist, do not call yourself an Arminian. Do not call yourself a provisionist. Do not call yourself
a provisionist if you're a non-Calvinist. Don't call yourself a provisionist. Why? Why? He's about to give an extremely spurious argument for it.
And any kind of label like that, okay? If we
any kind of label like what? Like that. So labels are okay, but not labels like that, whatever that is.
You do wind up with a label. It's better if our label comes from a procedural thing, such as
from a procedural thing, whatever that means. From a procedural thing, such as
like an inductive method practitioner.
Oh, I'm an inductive method practitioner. Yeah, that's a really useful label. I'm an inductive method practitioner. Right. Do you have any conclusions from your inductive method? No, Kevin Thompson seems to be saying. Don't ever come to a conclusion. If you come to a conclusion, you're going to be stuck in deadness. Seems to be his argument here. Oh, so you can never actually say this is true. This is a foundational truth that I will stake my life on. Such as Christ died for all. No. Stick with the procedure. Never come to a conclusion, he seems to be saying. And if he's not saying that, please help me understand what he's saying.
Rather than a label that is associated with a set of conclusive propositions.
Don't get a label that comes with a set of conclusive propositions. Don't ever come to a conclusion. Don't ever say these things are definitive conclusions that I can prove inductively from Scripture. No. Just stay in the inductive quagmire. Never come to a conclusion. What's the point of that, Kevin? Now, maybe that's not what he's saying. If he's not saying that, I don't know what he's saying. That sounds like to me what he's saying. What moronic balderdash is this? So you can never say what your doctrines actually are. No. Don't associate yourself with any doctrines. No. I'm just using the inductive method. I don't have any conclusions. I'm stuck in the procedure for eternity.
Propositional statements of belief, okay? Because we want to continue to stay in explore mode. We want to
continue to stay in explore mode. Never come to a conclusion. Never say this is definitely the truth. No. Constantly exploring and never coming to a knowledge of the truth. Sorry, Kevin Thompson. That's demonic.
Commit the same problem the Calvinists are committing by defending a set of fixed, stagnant, stale propositions.
Fixed, stagnant, stale propositions. So he's conflating fixed with stagnant and stale. Is the Bible fixed? Well, then it must be stagnant and stale. And if you say it's not fixed, then you're a heretic. No, the Bible is fixed. Oh, well, it must be therefore stagnant and stale, because that's what happened with the Calvinists. They fixed things. They came to a fixed conclusion, and therefore fixed conclusions are wrong. Well, only if the fixed conclusion is wrong. Is the fixed conclusion wrong, Kevin? This is moronic balderdash. This is as stupid as Calvinism.
We are, God is a procedural God.
God is a procedural God. God's still evolving. What on earth are you talking about? Oh, I didn't say God's still evolving. Well, then what are you saying? This is ridiculous.
It's not a stagnant pond.
Oh, he's not a stagnant pond. No, he's the source of life, but he is fixed. So does Kevin Thompson believe God is not immutable, that he's constantly changing? This is moronic balderdash. And if I'm misunderstanding him, please show me how.
So we're not going to follow him that way. Also, the Calvinist paradigm tree, which shows how Arminianism is a branch of Calvinism, and we should regard it that way in Arminius's life. And you can go watch that video for more of this. Arminius.
So he jumps from that thing to that thing to that thing to that thing as though they're all connected. Notice the lack of humility with Kevin Thompson. He doesn't question whether he could possibly be wrong. If I'm wrong, please show me how. That's the way that we should operate. Maybe we've made a mistake on something. Maybe we should have a little bit more humility and go, well, this is how it seems to me at the moment, but maybe I've missed something. But these are the things that I'm sure about. Kevin Thompson wants to be a relativist. He's not sure about any conclusions. He's stuck in procedure mode, ever learning and never able to come to a knowledge of the truth, it seems to me. And I'll say it again, if I'm wrong about that, please show me how. But surely we can come to conclusions. What's wrong with coming to conclusions? If they're the right conclusions, then it's right to come to the conclusion. If they're the right conclusions, it's wrong not to come to the conclusion and to say, oh, no, we don't want to get stuck in a fixed system because that's what the Calvinists have done. Well, actually, no, they haven't, because they're constantly changing it depending on what tick of the clock it is, like every other heretic. No, if something's true, we should be fixed on it.
Yes.
But now we're back to Arminianism is the branch of Calvinism. Why? Why? Because Arminius is built on the back of Calvin, which is built on the back of Augustine, and Augustinianism goes back to Manichaeanism, and Augustine was provoked to go back to his Manichaeanism as a Christian by Pelagius. Augustine agreed with Pelagius that if we're able to believe, if we have the ability to believe as creatures made in God's image, then that would be a good thing to do. That would be meritorious. That would be a good work. Augustine agreed with Pelagius on this, and so he said, therefore we can't. And he went back to his Manichaeanism. God has decreed everything. God has determined everything. Determinism. God is the author of evil. Except that he's not the author of evil. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he's not. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he's not. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, no, he's not. Depending on which tick of the clock it is. Depending on who you're trying to deceive and how you're trying to deceive them.
Was spent, he was embattled in all these controversies all his life. You know what he was doing? He was trying to prove the whole time that he was a good Calvinist. He's like, I'm following all the confessions. I have a quote in that video where he's saying, I recommend the readings of John Calvin up to and, just below Scripture. And if you read anything besides Scripture, read the stuff of John Calvin. He was constantly trying to defend himself as a Calvinist. And the most, staunch Calvinist of that era, Theodore Beza, he was presiding over the Synod of Dort, but he also appointed Arminius to all the positions that he went to. That staunch Calvinist, he had Arminius had Beza's approval and his recommendation, and to go and serve in the different places that he served. He and Beza were buds. They got along. Okay, it was a teacher-mentor kind of relationship. Arminius gets sick and dies. Okay, then later on you have the Synod of Dort that comes up.
So does that remind anybody of Turretin Fan and Dan Chapper? It's fascinating to me how friendly Calvinists are with Arminians at times, and how friendly Arminians are with Calvinists. There is a lot that they agree on. Arminians and Calvinists are more Pelagian than I am. Calvinists ignore history when they accuse all non-Calvinists of being semi-Pelagian. They ignore the fundamental problem that Pelagius had, that he turned faith into a work. And Augustine agreed with him on it. And that is the fundamental issue that has led to Arminianism and Calvinism. As we know Calvinism today, as those terms are usually used. But I agree with Kevin Thompson. Arminianism is just a stream of Calvinism. And to lump me in with Arminians is rank stupidity. You know nothing about the history of Calvinism and Arminianism, all the way back to Augustine and the Manichaeans, and what the actual disagreement between Pelagius and Augustine was about, and where they both went wrong. And where, therefore, Luther and Calvin and Arminius and Beza all went wrong, because they followed Augustine into error. Because Augustine followed Pelagius, and then to disagree with Pelagius, he created another error. Absolutely disgusting stupidity. And you can't get a Calvinist to see it. The Calvinist has been so brainwashed by their paradigm that they're not interested in what the actual truth is.
What you need to understand is that people think of Arminianism as being the opposite of Calvinism. It is not the opposite of Calvinism by any stretch of the imagination. It should be regarded as a variant of Calvinism. Right now, there are variants within Calvinism. There are people who call themselves like 4-point Calvinists and this kind of thing, and they all consider themselves Calvinists. You need to understand that historic Arminianism should be seen as a branch of Calvinism.
Exactly, Kevin. The Remonstrants were Calvinists. Really, really dumb to call me and Kevin Anderson Remonstrants. Even Kevin Thompson is not a Remonstrant. He's out on his own tree somewhere.
Just as the Reformation should not be seen as this big, we should not venerate the Reformation as anything other than a Catholic squabble. We should not talk about the Synod of Dort of anything other than a Calvinist squabble. And the result of the Synod of Dort was not Calvinism and non-Calvinism. It is two different branches of Calvinism. You have Arminian Calvinism and Besan Calvinism. Those are your two different branches of Calvinism. Let me tell you the common beliefs that they have. They both believed in total depravity. Okay? They both believe in total depravity. They both believe you had to have some kind of prevenient grace to overcome your total depravity so you could believe. That is a Calvinistic belief. That is not a biblical belief. They both made the mistake of starting with the human will. Well, you say, well, Arminius believed in free will. It doesn't matter. Starting with the will at all is a...
And when you try to point out to a Calvinist that we don't agree with irresistible grace, they think that we don't agree with grace. Because the only grace that they can understand is micromanaging grace, where God is deciding our decisions for us. He didn't create us with an actual free will. No, they redefine free will to mean free to do according to your nature. So not free because God has determined your nature. So your nature isn't free. Oh, what's this emphasis on freedom, Graham? Why are you such a humanist? Oh, yeah, that's the other accusation. That's the next thing that they jump to. See, this is the thing. Calvinists don't want to understand the non-Calvinist position. They've been pre-programmed with all of these talking points. Oh, you just hate the sovereignty of God. You're such a humanist if you disagree with them, because they can't understand any disagreement except within the straw man that has been created of all disagreement. And so they project onto you their imagination of what you're actually thinking and believing. They don't listen to what you believe. Why do I have a problem with God determining all of my choices? Because it makes him the author of sin, and my God is not the author of sin. Now, Calvinists won't say that God is the author of sin. Well, mostly they won't. You will get Calvinists who'll admit that, yes, Calvinism has God as the author of sin, but oftentimes they'll be double-minded about it. Or they'll say, oh, no, God's not the author of sin, while their system teaches that God is the author of sin. It's the logical consequence, an unavoidable logical consequence, because they use the author analogy. Or you don't blame the author for his creatures being sinful. Oh, so God is the author of sin. But you've just somehow ad hoc absolved him of responsibility for sin while he's actually responsible for sin. Oh, you're using humanistic philosophy. No, I'm using biblical logic. Biblical philosophy. But okay. Yeah, beep pop boop pop. Pre-programmed response number 5628395. You hate the sovereignty of God. You are a humanist. Beep pop 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 beep pop pop.
Mistake.
But of course they have pre-programmed responses. They're Calvinists. God has pre-programmed them to respond like that. If Calvinism is true, they'd have no choice. They're just doing according to the will that God has pre-programmed them to have. Oh, don't use the word pre-programmed. It makes it too obvious that Calvinism teaches we are robots. We're just puppets. No. We don't want people to realize that's what it actually teaches.
Do not do it. Do not start with the will. I hear people talking. I'm talking about non-Calvinists, good guys, people who believe the Bible. They'll make the mistake of trying to, go against Calvinism by promoting the concept of free will. Do not do that. The philosophical territory of the will is Manichaean, Gnostic, Augustinian, Calvinist territory. As soon as you go into that territory, our territory is Scripture. Their territory is a philosophical view of the human will. As soon as you go into that territory, that is where they dominate, because they dominate everything that is non-scriptural. Remember, Calvinism is clever post hoc rationalizations, clever philosophical reasons for why Scripture isn't true. So you have left off from scriptural authority, and now you're supporting this concept of free will. Now it's just a matter.
Where has Kevin Thompson mentioned scripture so far? He hasn't mentioned scripture once, but he criticizes other people for engaging in philosophy. All he's engaged in so far is philosophy. This is so hypocritical and moronic, Kevin. This is imbecilic.
Matter of time before they got you. So if you are a non-Calvinist and you're teaching Sunday school to a bunch of kiddos and you're trying to support the idea of free will and you teach free will and God gave us free will, you are preparing them to become Calvinists later. Do not teach free will. We do not need to teach free will. What we need to focus on is scriptural authority.
Well, why
that is it. Scriptural.
Why are you being such a hypocrite? Why aren't you focusing on scripture?
Authority is where we operate. Clever philosophical post hoc rationalizations is where they operate. And if they get you in the arena of philosophy, it's just a matter of time. They spend a lot of time making up their clever post hoc rationalizations. And
what's wrong with philosophy based on scripture? Philosophy simply means love of wisdom. Shouldn't we love Jesus? Jesus is wisdom. Shouldn't we love him? There is a biblical philosophy, Kevin Thompson. I don't know what's wrong with you. You're such a weirdo.
Typically better at it than people who haven't been in and back out of Calvinism. So they will typically get you. And that is not good. So we do not mess with the will. We stick with scriptural authority. What else do they have in common? They both believed, Arminius and Beza, believed that predestination includes conversion. They just disagreed on whether or not foreknowledge was involved. They both believed that election was about conversion, part of salvation. They just disagreed on whether or not foreknowledge was involved. And so if you were a non-Calvinist, you would understand Scripture presents election as a service thing, not a salvation thing. Mm-hmm. Well, Calvinism presents it.
I agree. Election is not about conversion. You don't find anywhere in Scripture where election is used as a synonym or a term related to conversion. It follows conversion because we're elected to service because we're converted. That's the only connection you'll find to conversion. But Calvinists and Arminians think that election is about conversion. And it's not.
As a salvation thing. So if you are following the Baptist faith and message that uses the word election in like as if it's synonymous with salvation, which is what the Baptist faith and message does, you are perpetuating Calvinism without intending to do so. I have a video. Now you think I'm getting on to you guys. I have a video that I think is still up about chosen in Ephesians 1:4, where I refute Calvinism based on the bad premise that election is about salvation, because I didn't know any better yet. So I'm not telling you something that I haven't done too. I've made this mistake myself in the past. Actually, this guy right here helped me out a lot in that arena, the faith of God's elect. And now it helped me with the inductive method and to be able to see Scripture that, yes, wow, I am as a non-Calvinist, I was bringing this into Scripture without realizing it. And then he helped kind of scrub that away so that I could see Scripture more clearly, which is great. So if you get a chance to get that book, Faith of God's Elect, get that book. I may read from it in a few minutes.
You got that one, Kevin? I've got a feeling you've mentioned that previously.
But I still have some time. So they both believed in some kind of, so they both thought election was about conversion, salvation. And then, by the way, we have videos on 2 Thessalonians 2:13. If somebody God hath from the beginning chosen you to salvation. We have videos on that.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember us having talked about this, and this is one of the ones that's changed your mind on it. You're still not settled on exactly what election is, but you know what it's not. And you've helped me see that as well.
That explain that. We have about 3 of them right now. So go check that out when you get a chance. They both taught some kind of prevenient grace was necessary to overcome total depravity. Calvinists just teach that theirs is irresistible, whereas Arminians didn't, but they still believe that prevenient grace comes from Calvinism. They both have the idea that the atonement saves. You hear this kind of stuff all the time, especially on the discussion forums with Calvinists. They talk about limited atonement as if, I think I just saw a quote from R.C. Sproul today that, we believe in atonement. God isn't just trying to save people. It actually does save with certainty. Well, he framed things for certainty, and he's making the mistake of thinking the atonement is what saves. The atonement is not what saves. I'll show you some passages on that in a few minutes. And then they both believe in perseverance of the saints. Arminius simply believed that God foreknew and foresaw who would persevere and elected them, for salvation, which that's not scriptural, that's Calvinistic. And they both believe that adoption occurs at conversion. And a lot of non-Calvinists today perpetuate that false idea, the idea that adoption occurs at conversion rather than where Scripture says it does in Romans 8:23, which is at the redemption of the body. So the main takeaway, you got to understand that from the Synod of Dort, if you are a non-Calvinist, do not think that the outcome of that was Calvinism and non-Calvinism. No, the outcome of that is two different branches of Calvinism, Arminian Calvinism and Bayesian Calvinism. And we make the mistake. And because we think we're in non-Calvinist territory, we wind up promoting what I've called Calvinism light in the past. It's not quite as strong as Bayesian Calvinism, but it's still very Calvinistically premised and still outside of Scripture. And we non-Calvinists historically have perpetuated that. Then that lingo and that language surrounds the way we think, talk, and operate, even in non-Calvinism land. And so that's why it's so important to pay attention epistemically and go back to first principles thinking and question all these phrases that we're so comfortable with and double check and see whether they are scriptural or not. And you'll find out a lot of the times they aren't. There aren't. There's so many things that aren't scriptural that we think are scriptural that we just keep perpetuating.
Right. So 1, perpetuate Augustinian predestination. 2, perpetuate Augustinian election. 3, prevenient grace punctilia. 4, speaking as if the atonement saves, this sufficient or efficient nonsense. Repeating things like place your faith and trust in the finished work of Christ. And this is useless because he's not saying what the truth is. He's attacking all of these ideas, but what's the truth then? What's the issues with these things? See, some of these things he probably has half a point. But a lot of these things are he's just being dumb. He's being really, really dumb. Some of these are good points, but a lot of them are really dumb ways of saying it. Anyway. What do I want to play next? What is total depravity according to the Honest Calvinism Conference?